2021 isn't off to the greatest start in the world. With the chaos going on in our nation's capital, certain images on social media had got me thinking that night. NASCAR publicly distancing itself from the Confederate flag, as well as a subsection of the fan base that quite frankly is just straight up toxic and racist, will go down as one of the greatest moves the sanctioning body has made in recent years. From my personal experiences, the interactions I've had with those on the West Coast who know nothing about the sanctioning body always come back to, isn't it racist? Isn't it just toxic? While there's always going to be weirdos and just lame people in every community, the majority of NASCAR fans are the best in all of sports, period. While the sanctioning body is evolving and willing to adapt with the times, that's not to say that it doesn't have a dark past. NASCAR's roots are embedded in the South, and in the first 30 seasons of the sanctioning body's history, they needed to endear themselves to their Southern core audience. With the stock car movement sweeping the South was also experiencing another particular movement for social change. The civil rights movement was a struggle for social justice that took place mainly during the 50s and 60s for Black Americans to gain equal rights under the law in the United States. In the thick of it all is a driver from Dansville, Virginia, in Wendell Scott. After returning from the war, he opened up his own auto repair shop, but also took up a profession that would lead him into stock car racing. That would be running moonshine. To do this, Scott had to know how to build and drive fast cars so he could outrun the police. NASCAR was built off of these men, moonshine runners who would outrun the police and soup up their cars to do so. It's funny how the audience NASCAR is trying to distance itself from are some of the biggest bootlickers you will ever see. The origins of NASCAR include outrunning law enforcement, but I guess a lot of these people didn't know that. Eventually, Wendell was able to carve out a career racing in his local town of Dansville. He eventually got into racing across other circuits outside of his hometown, but let's just say he wasn't particularly the most liked in this era. If you want to learn more on what Wendell had to go through during this time span, I highly recommend the movie Grease Lightning.
When they wave the green flag, you take off.
Black flag means get the hell off the track.
Get the hell off the track on the black flag.
That's it, you understand me?
Tell me about the checker flag.
I wouldn't worry about that checkered flag if I was you, boy.
It's a loosely based movie on Scott's biography. Not everything in the movie actually happened, but most in fact did. The stuff he would go through were obviously the racist taunts he would get from some of the fan base, as well as getting letters and phone calls saying, "We'll kill your family if you're out on that damn track." And at one point when he first started, being denied at the gate to race in any NASCAR sanctioned events altogether. Thankfully, the founder of NASCAR, Bill France, would end up sorting all of this out. He said, "You're a NASCAR member, and as of now, you will always be treated as a NASCAR member." Competing in NASCAR might have been tough at first, but winning was a whole nother situation. Scott didn't have the necessary funding to run up front a whole lot, but when he did, he was spectacular. In 495 starts, he has 20 top 5s along with 147 top 10s, including a win he got at Jacksonville Speedway Park on December 1st, 1963. Even though the win is counted in the record books, he didn't get the trophy and really didn't get to celebrate neither. They said it was a scoring error, but I'll let you read in between the lines on that one. So although he was credited with the victory, his moment of joy was taken, and he would never get the chance to redo that ever again. This would be Wendell Scott's only career win in NASCAR, period. Nearly a decade after his first and only win, Scott was still racing in 1973. He was forced to retire that season due to injuries sustained in an accident at Talladega Superspeedway. Scott returned to his auto repair business, which now attracted customers from all over the country because of his reputation as an amazing driver and mechanic. Wendell Scott would pass away on December 23rd, 1990 from spinal cancer. He would be inducted into the International Motorsports Hall of Fame in '99, as well as the NASCAR Hall of Fame in 2015. But in 2010, the speedway he won his first and only cup race at gave the family a personalized trophy dedicated to his victory. In the years that followed, NASCAR has done a tremendous job trying to make the sport as diverse as it possibly can be. NASCAR's past may not be the greatest in some areas, but what they're doing now is going to evolve the sport for decades to come.
NASCAR needed a change. Ever since its inception, really, NASCAR has been labeled as a sport where white, racist people can come around to enjoy a race. But today's NASCAR is the complete opposite of that. Today's NASCAR is more unified, more diverse, and more inclusive. NASCAR's effort for change really kicked into high gear in 2004 with the launch of the Drive for Diversity program. Introduced by former NASCAR chairman Brian France back in 2004, the Drive for Diversity program was created to be shown as a gateway to allow more minorities and women into the sport that has been generally known as a place for white males. This program, which still stands to this day, allows minorities and women to come into NASCAR and able to have a career in the sport, whether it's through a corporate job, maybe in NASCAR in Charlotte, maybe in the team as a crew chief, a spotter, or a part of the team, or even as a driver. And it has created some very successful drivers like Daniel Suarez and Bubba Wallace. But 2020 is when really NASCAR had to step up to the plate. The May 25th death of George Floyd created outrage across America and introduced numerous protests across the country. And it was around then when NASCAR started to step up. At the start of the Atlanta race, right before they took the green flag, NASCAR ordered the drivers to stop at the start-finish line. Then NASCAR President Steve Phelps got onto the radio and offered a message to both NASCAR's fan base and to the country. The speech had Steve Phelps saying that our country needs to do better, as well as our sport, and that the time is now to listen, to understand, and to stand against racism and racial injustice. We ask our drivers and all of our fans to join us in this mission, to take a moment of reflection and to acknowledge that we must do better as a sport. On top of that, NASCAR had numerous drivers from the Cup Series come together to create a short video clip across all their social media platforms to create a speech together that NASCAR is once again willing to push for change and to fight against racism and do better as a sport. This showed that NASCAR was really starting to begin real change. But many people didn't really believe them. Many people thought that NASCAR only did this just for press. Until then, a move that nobody expected to happen, but it finally did. NASCAR banned the Confederate flag. Because NASCAR races in the South, the Confederate flag is prominent at its racetracks, so much so that many people make a connection with the Confederate flag and NASCAR. So for NASCAR to ban the Confederate flag outright from all of its events was huge. NASCAR continued to show their support for change by rallying around their only black driver, Bubba Wallace, who was one of the main reasons for NASCAR banning the Confederate flag, and by supporting him when Bubba Wallace drove a Black Lives Matter paint scheme at a NASCAR Cup race on Wednesday night at Martinsville Speedway. What's even bigger was NASCAR's president Steve Phelps, stating that during the meeting when they announced that this change was going to happen, that they didn't like it, they can get up and leave. That showed that NASCAR was going all in. They didn't care about the typical business stuff. They didn't care about losing money. They didn't care about losing people from its core fan base. They cared about doing what was right. They cared about the greater good. And then just a few days later at Talladega, NASCAR unified around its only black driver, Bubba Wallace, by pushing his car to the front of the grid and standing behind him in unison after it was reported that a noose was found in Bubba Wallace's garage. Now, even though that incident did not result in a hate crime, it showed that NASCAR was real and NASCAR was committed to change for the better. NASCAR also participated in the You Can Play Pride auction. This was an organization that was dedicated to ensure equality, respect, and safety for all athletes without regard to sexual orientation and or gender identity. All of this change shows that NASCAR is in a new era. NASCAR even 5-10 years ago would not have made this change, mainly out of fear of losing their core audience. Today's NASCAR doesn't care about that. Today's NASCAR only cares about doing what's good. Today's NASCAR cares about us, regardless of its race, where we came from, or of our sexual orientation. The people that were at the Talladega Superspeedway protesting with the Confederate flag, or the people that were flying defund NASCAR across the racetrack, that was the has-been NASCAR. Those are the people that will stay in the past. Today's NASCAR and the future of NASCAR is more people like me, more people like you, more people like Darian, more people from all different types of shapes and sizes across the world that might believe in different things or come from different things, but all come unified together for the joy of racing. And that is what the sanctioning body of NASCAR cares about especially. They care more about acceptance, regardless of who you are or where you come from. That is a NASCAR that everyone needs to know. The NASCAR back then with the Confederate flag and the Rebel 400 and the discrimination towards Wendell Scott, that was in the past. While we should acknowledge it, that should not shape NASCAR in today's world. Today's NASCAR leadership is no longer one specific race. It's people of all types. Women, black, white, Latinos, Asians. Is one of everyone. Under old leadership, NASCAR would have been too afraid for those changes. Today's NASCAR is all for it. NASCAR is proud of its future fan base. They don't care about those old people that's still stuck in the 1960s and 70s. They care about us. They care about the future. They care about being more united with people across the world, again, with different shapes, different sizes, different races, different genders. They all come together. They want all of us to come together for the joy of NASCAR. And that is why I can say, proudly, as a mixed man of Jamaican and German descent, I am proud to become a NASCAR fan.
The efforts they're making through these programs are going to help sustain the sport for decades to come. It's about time we stop mislabeling NASCAR and call it for what it is, a stock car sanctioning body that welcomes everyone and anyone who loves racing. And once again, that'll do it for another video. Thank you guys so much for watching. This is Black Flags Matter. Catch you next time.